Hey there, it's Allie with Allie Answers. If you are new to the channel, welcome. And if you've been here before, welcome back. If you haven't yet, if you would stop now and go ahead and give me a thumbs up and hit the subscribe button, that is for the algorithm so that more people will see this video. And the more people that we reach, the more good we can do. Something that takes people by surprise often is sundowning. So those of us who have been taking care of someone with dementia will know easily what sundowning is, but for those of you that this is all new for, let me explain. When it comes to dementia, every person is an individual and every person is going to respond differently depending on their temperament and where the damage is in the brain. So dementia is effectively brain damage, and it is the response of the body to that brain damage. As I was telling a family just last night, sundowning is something that happens for a lot of people. It is often something that is what gets the attention of loved ones and makes people realize that something is going on. So sundowning is basically a change in behavior, increase in bad behavior, or more anxiety or more problems related to dementia. The end of the workday is often called the witching hour. And that is because a lot of times when people are trying to get dinner ready, their children are falling apart. So kids that have been up all day and maybe even had naps, they're kind of just falling apart. It's right before dinner. They're usually hungry. And we know that this happens with children. So we should not be surprised that it happens with seniors, especially those who have dementia. We all get tired and we all get grumpy and out of sorts towards the end of the day, usually between mid-afternoon and dinner time. And a lot of that has to do with just plain exhaustion, not to mention hunger and frustration. Some people have theorized that sundowning happens at the end of the day when the shadows kind of creep up and things feel different. Maybe things look different because the impending darkness. Sundowning is much worse in the winter time or in places of the country that don't have as much sun. So some of the things you might see with a senior with dementia at the end of the day is grumpiness, exhaustion. They might get mad at you if you're trying to have a conversation with them. They might have a harder time following that line of conversation. This is a time that they can get agitated and start wanting to pace and walk. If they are mobile, then they're going to probably want to go somewhere. One of the things that people have surmised is that that's also the time of day that a lot of times people were coming home from work back in the day, or if it was a housewife, she was preparing for her husband to return back to the house. And as we know, back in the day, it was common to try to get the kids ready for their dad to come home. The house had to be clean, dinner had to be ready. It was kind of a stressful time for a housewife because she wanted everything to be in place and perfect. If she was a housewife that worked on a farm, she was preparing a lot of food for family and for maybe even farmhands and people who were coming in. Children were finishing homework. It can be a stressful time. So it does make sense that for someone who lives mostly in the past, or they're confused about the time frame that they're actually living in, what their age is and where they are, that sundowning is going to happen. I had a lady one time that used to every day around 3 o'clock go sit on the bench at the front door and she would watch for her children to get off the school bus. Now, all of us knew better than to tell her that her children were grown and had their own grandchildren. We would let her sit and enjoy her time on the bench. But after a while, we would redirect her, maybe say, let's go bake some cookies and the kids can have some when they get home. Whatever it took to just redirect her if she started getting agitated. But as long as she was happy and comfortable, we left her alone. So that's going to be one of my tips. If the person is agitated, please stop doing whatever it is that's agitating them if you can. So if you're trying to get them to take a bath at 4 o'clock or 5 o'clock in the afternoon, I don't recommend that. Nobody wants to be messed with when they're tired and grumpy, and that is a tired and grumpy time of day. The other thing I'll say is if they're doing something that isn't bothering anyone, including themselves, leave them alone. If they just want to sit and look out the window and wait for the children to get off the bus, if they're not hurting anybody and they're not agitated, let it go. Let it be. Number one, we're not going to try to do strenuous things. We're not going to go to the doctor. We're not going to go to the grocery store. We are not going to do any of those things during the time that a person's sundown. So for most people, that is going to be sometime between 3 o'clock in the afternoon and dinner time. It can also extend past dinner time up to bedtime, so you know your loved one best, but that is not the time for strenuous activity or asking questions, having big conversations. It just isn't. And number 2 is leave them alone. If things are going well and they're fine, if they're folding and refolding clothes, or they are looking at the newspaper and they've been looking at the same front page of the newspaper for an hour, leave it be. If he's fine, he's fine. A lot of times anxiety will come with this time of day, as we mentioned the reasons why, and sometimes you may not know the reason why. You just may notice that your loved one starts getting more agitated. So one of the things that we can do is let them know that they are exactly where they need to be. General things like you are exactly where you need to be, your family knows where you are, even if you're the family. But let's be honest, sometimes they don't know you, right? So if you're at that point of dementia where they don't recognize you, you can say, Grandpa, this is Lauren. I'm your granddaughter. But it's less agitating to just say, Grandpa, why don't you have a seat and let me get you something to drink? And here's your favorite book, or here's your favorite TV show. There's no reason to try to change their perception of what is going on if you can just redirect them. If they get agitated because the kitchen's a mess, let them clean it. Let them wipe down the counters. If they want to walk around and sweep, or they want to wipe things down, that is actually a normal reaction to stress, and it's a healthy one. This is a great time to use up physical energy in whatever way is appropriate for your loved one. So if you have little exercise bands, and that you can try that. They have exercises that they enjoy doing. If you have a pool and they like to be in the pool, this is a great time for that. If they like to walk around the block, great. Go ahead and let them have a walk around the block, and you can encourage them that when you're done, you're going to go back and have some dinner. Again, we're not going to do anything to agitate during this time period. Every person is different, so some people will actually have more trouble and more issues with the morning schedule than they do with the afternoon. So make adjustments accordingly. When your loved one is in the best possible situation is when you should have appointments, when you should have visitors, and never feel bad being honest with visitors that this is just not a good time. That can be touchy, but I think it's fair to say afternoons are really hard on Dad. Why don't you plan on coming in the morning, and I'll make sure that you have coffee, you can bring donuts, and he will enjoy your visit. Or if Grandpa does better after dinner, maybe suggest the visit after dinner. There are going to be changes to that rhythm of life depending on how things are going. If there's any sign of crazy behavioral changes, remember to get them tested for urinary tract infections. I'll drop the video on that down below, but anything that is just kind of crazy behavior, I would definitely make sure that there's no infection in place. But just remember that you are more likely to have behavioral issues in the afternoon. And the final tip that I'll give is if you're going to give your loved one medication to help them have a more pleasant evening, then make sure that you give it early enough. And that may take some trial and error to figure out what works. I had one gentleman that if you waited until after 4 o'clock, he was going to throw his medication across the room. So we did have to learn that maybe for him, by 3:30 was a better time to give it to him. And it was better to give it to him with his ice cream. So trial and error wins the race. And it's okay when we have a bad day to just forget about it and learn and move on. Don't be hard on yourself. It's a learning process, and it is a moving target. Set yourself up for success by making sure that the afternoon is as stress-free as possible, and everyone will thank you. Thank you so much for watching. I hope that you will come back and watch my next video. You can hit the little bell so that you will get notifications whenever I upload. I hope you have a fantastic day. Bye-bye.